Hi everyone, and welcome back to Needs More Jazzhands. So today we are going to be watching something I'm so excited for because this will be the first time I get to work with something that's really new. We're going to be watching Legacies, Season 3, Episode 3, Salvatore the Musical. So this is a musical episode for the spin-off of the Vampire Diaries, although it's mostly, from what we've been told, going to be talking about the Vampire Diaries plot. It's going to be the Legacies characters acting it out and integrating it with their drama and all of that. I have no idea what we're in for. I'm very excited. Normally the things that I'm talking about are things that have been out for years, that people have weighed in on one way or the other, and this will be something that I get to chip in on really early in the game. So I'm excited, and we're going to get started with it. So a little bit of background on Legacies for those of you who aren't watching, or who aren't watching the show. I'm assuming you're watching me. So anyway, we had the Vampire Diaries, and this focused on the town of Mystic Falls, and Stefan and Damon and Elena, and who gets who, and all of that. Then there was the spin-off to that, which was the Originals, which was based on the original family of vampires who originally appeared on the Vampire Diaries and their exploits in New Orleans, particularly dealing with the fact that Klaus, the baddest of the bad, was going to have a daughter, and her name was Hope, and essentially he was willing to do anything to keep her safe. Finally, we get to Legacies, which is skipped into the future from both of the prior shows and features Hope, so the daughter of Klaus Michelson from the Originals, and the Saltzman twins, who are complicated. Let's see, long story short. In the Vampire Diaries, there was a guy named Alaric, and he was there. I don't particularly love Alaric, but he was human, and then he was kind of an original vampire, but then he was human again, and he was in love with Jo, or Josette, who was secretly part of a family of witches in the Gemini Coven, where twins rule, and some Geminis became siphons, and so siphons can drain the magic from other people, but they don't have their own. Jo was not a siphon, but she had tried to escape her evil brother, Kai. There's so many things I can't explain there, but anyway, Jo was pregnant with Alaric's twins. They were about to get married, and her brother Kai decided to stab her trying to kill the twins, because a new rising set of twins can take the power and the leadership of the coven away from the prior twin, who was at that time Kai. So all of that insanity happens. The twins are still inside of Jo as she's dying, and her coven casts a spell to save the twins by implanting them into Caroline, one of the vampires, who then kind of co-parents with Alaric throughout the course of the Vampire Diaries. So they're kind of the main characters. We also have Landon, who was a phoenix, the son of a golem creature that can make people disappear from all memory and existence, and many other characters that are your traditional vampires, witches, and werewolves. So anyway, lots of background here. The Originals had, I believe, 6 seasons. Vampire Diaries had, I believe, 7. And this is the 3rd season of Legacies. So, there's literally over a decade of backstory that I won't be able to give you all. But hopefully this episode sums some of that up for you. So I'm excited about that, and we're just going to go ahead and get into it, and I will give you my reactions as we go. Okay, so clearly I'm going to have to do a little bit more catching up to even be able to talk about anything. So, Hope is the daughter of Klaus Michelson, also of a super important werewolf queen, Haley, who is amazing, and unfortunately dead at this point, as is Klaus. So they're also, the Michelsons are descended from a witch bloodline, so Hope is at least a witch and a werewolf with the potential to be a vampire if she dies. So she's the tribrid. Nobody else is like her. She had been dating Landon, who, as I said, was a phoenix, which meant that when he died, he rose again. But that ability is gone now. And they had a big fight about essentially she's overprotective of him. And so he's saying, it doesn't make me less of a being just because I'm mortal and vulnerable to things. So he's upset that she's overprotective. She has big reasons for that because, both of her parents are dead and multiple people she's cared about are dead, and she kind of has this whole complex where death is her fault, and so all she wants is to keep him safe. So both totally valid reasons, but they're fighting. So apparently Hope has some anger issues this episode. We'll see where that goes. Okay. They just did something really interesting that I love. So they had pitched this episode as essentially it is the kind of episode where the musical happens because the characters are performing a musical. But so far, this is way more character-driven than we were led to believe, and there is a monster. So I don't know that I believe that that's the only motivation to be singing, and I do think we're going to get more of it than that. But what we start the episode with is Hope talking to a therapist, he calls himself a guidance counselor, about these outbursts of anger that she's been having, which result in explosions of her power or her strength, etc. And so one of these was potentially caused by upset over her breakup, maybe ? With Landon, and the other one triggered by people joking about her father, the mass murderer. So already we're seeing this is clearly something about Hope's emotions, and she's been known all the show to be a character that really hides her emotions, that loves really deeply, but is scared to get hurt by losing more people. So, really interesting start to it. Clearly we're dealing with characters' emotions. I love it. Makes a good musical episode. At this point, she says, I can't be here. I've got to track a monster. I was tracking a monster to this room, actually. Wait a minute, you're the monster. To the therapist, who is a character we have never seen before. And he says, no, of course, I've known you your entire life. And she says, right, of course you are. And I love this, because this means that we are having a, mental manipulative monster, which makes me really believe that the singing is going to be hugely connected to him. I don't know if he's going to be considered a good monster or a bad monster yet, but it's definitely an interesting start to the episode. This is so character-focused so far, and the monster makes it... it would be lame if a show that has, witches and werewolves and vampires and more didn't have a magical cause for their musical episode. It would be a little bit weird not to use that. So I'm hoping that he's tied into it here. Guidance counselor? It's me, Robin Goodfellow. Okay, Puck. Okay, we're fairies exist in this world, kind of. One does, at least. So we're definitely getting some fae elements here. You don't call a character Robin Goodfellow without dragging that in. And he is clearly playing on people's emotions. He can sense what's going on. He knows their drama and how to play with it and how to tug on it, but it seems so far that he's really concerned with people opening up about their emotions and being honest with themselves about where they are and how to move forward, and I'm excited. I hope that this goes in the direction that I'm hoping it does. There is so much emotional baggage on all of these characters this season. Now, So technically this was supposed to be in season 2, but then COVID happened. So it's the start of season 3. But what it's really drawing on is season 2's drama. And the last, 13 however many years of drama in Mystic Falls, in New Orleans, etc. So I'm really interested to see how we really delve out this, like, internal trauma, these characters that are really good at hiding their emotions. And I want to see where that goes, because the emotions are so tied to all of our supernatural characters, to how the vampires and the witches and the werewolves work. So I'm excited. Give me a Puck character, and I am here for it. So it seems like this episode is going to be making Alaric a central character, which I don't personally like Alaric, because I think he brings a lot of problems on himself, but whatever. So as with many musical episodes, this seems highly based on relationships, whether people are ready for it, how their emotions get in the way of them, beginnings, endings, all of that. Alaric's history with relationships is, we'll just go with bad. So he came into the show because he was interested in, I don't completely remember what his original reason was, but anyway, he ended up dating Elena, the main character of The Vampire Diaries, and Jenna, who then got murdered. He also, as I said, was engaged to Josette, who was murdered. And there's probably at least one more person that he's dated that was killed. So his backstory is basically... he also kind of dated Caroline for a little while, because they were like, we both love our kids. And then it was like, wait a minute, you're like 40 or something, and she's like 17. The fact that she's a vampire doesn't change the fact that she's literally only lived like 17 years. So, also she was in love with someone else, and there's all sorts of things there. So he also had a relationship with her that ended in her fiance dying. So all that to say, his love life hasn't gone well. The show is introducing a potential new love interest for him in a sheriff that has been compelled to sometimes know and sometimes not know about supernatural stuff. So there's a lot of control issues there that are a bit problematic. But all of that to say, apparently we are going to delve into two characters who have seen almost everyone they love die and how they respond to that. And that's a really interesting place to be starting from. So I'm excited. I don't see how this at all connects to the musical that we were promised, but I think it's a musical I'm going to enjoy more. We'll see. Okay. So Robin Goodfellow has asked Alaric to leave the school. He's the headmaster. Also kind of Caroline, but she's not a part of this series for no good narrative reason. I get that the actress wanted to move on with her life, but no good narrative reason. So he's just offered to take over the school, and of course, remember, I'm your best friend. I've known you your entire life. It gets it to work. So maybe we're not actually going to see Alaric processing his grief. I'm not sure. But we do learn that the musical... So we've been told before that the reason they're doing a musical is because it's needed to get the school state accreditation. And he has just pointed out that he has a great new arts program that could help them get the accreditation. So even if this is, we're singing because there's a musical, what it's really dealing with is the monster of the week has given us a need to have a musical. So even if he isn't forcing them to sing magically, he's definitely provoking the circumstances for it. I like it. It means that our villain and our narrative of this episode are tied in with the musical. Give me a reason for it. I love it. Thank you. This is, I've literally watched 6 minutes and 40 seconds, including commercials, so I'm going to pause a million times here. All of these pieces are really well put together with what I like to see in a musical episode. So we're seeing that the reason that Landon is writing the musical is because now that he is a human, he needs to be thinking about his life after the school, so getting into colleges and all of that, so he's writing the musical for arts credits. That makes perfect sense. Seeing Hope, your family is part of the history of this town and this school, is true, But of course it's going to hit on a trigger point for Hope, who has lost all of her family and who sees Landon as another opportunity to lose someone she loves. So the threads that are being woven here are really, really well done. Already we're seeing reasons that Alaric could be playing into all of this, Hope's baggage that she's been holding inside for so long, and now we're seeing Landon figuring out how to deal with life as a human again. So we're already getting all of these interesting dynamics at play. I really hope that the high expectations I'm getting here are borne out. Also, he said he's writing the songs, so that means we're getting original music, which I personally love. Jukebox musicals are great, but a new musical means that you can really, really tailor it to your characters. So if they don't do that, that's definitely something that gets points off in my book. Okay, so we're already tying into the bigger overall plot of season 2-3 blending. So we see that one of the big villains of season 2 is the Necromancer, who has power over the Malivore Pit, which is the pit that erased monsters from people's memories. So people won't know that they're real monsters because they don't know that they ever existed. So they don't know how to stop them. So at the end of last episode, there was a huge plan for the Necromancer and this character Alyssa, who used to be part of the Salvatore school but was kind of scorned by them and died and complicated stuff, and she's seemingly at least working for the Necromancer. She's just popped in to the school to warn one of our other vampire characters, MG, that there is a new monster coming to school, that he won't even know who it is because he's a mental control kind of monster, and that this is to distract all of the students from what the Necromancer's plans are. I love it. So what we got here is that we're tying it into the earlier plot. This is important. The fact that they're being distracted by this is part of the plan to move forward the villain's main plot. So we've got in-episode plot, we've got full seasons, plot. I'm always here for it. We'll just see how well all the pieces connect.
Don't be a hero. Someone else audition for Stefan.
Okay, number one, this show has people who can sing. Always a great thing. I love that they're putting such a spotlight on Chris Lee. His character rarely gets too much focus on the show, but he is an amazing singer. He was in Hamilton. I love him. I'm glad we get to see him spotlight a little bit more. We also get some meta discussion. So everybody wants to audition for Damon, the sexy bad boy, and we get some meta discourse on, oh no, but Stefan was like the anchor of the story and da-da-da-da-da. So I love that not only are we getting discussion in episode through the seasons of Legacies, we're also getting some meta discourse on the Vampire Diaries show, and we'll probably get some more on the originals. So there's way too much to be able to pack into one episode, but thus far I think they're doing a great job of it. I'm excited. Okay, so we see the Saltzman sisters, without auditioning, get drawn into playing the parts of Caroline, their mom, and Elena, the lead of the original show. So we've got some really great things going on there. My big question, anyone who's watched The Vampire Diaries knows that if Bonnie Bennett weren't there, everyone would be dead. Many times. And in fact, some people died and were brought back by Bonnie Bennett because she is the powerhouse of the show. She may not have been the female lead or even the secondary female lead on the show, but she's frankly the most important, and she always deserved better. Absolutely love Bonnie Bennett. However, we have no featured female black women. However, we have no featured black women on this show. So I'm curious to see what they do with her character, or if the show decides to write her out for no good reason. Hopefully not. That could be a major sticking point for me, though. So we'll see. We'll see what shows up there. Okay, so there's this great discourse again and again that shows up with the monster, and anytime somebody suspects him or doesn't suspect him, it always comes back to, I've known you my entire life. And MG just said, I've known you my entire life, just like everyone else at this school. Except for the fact that almost none of these characters have been at the school for that long. So Hope, Josie, and Hope came to the school when she was fairly young. I think she was supposed to be 7 or 8 at the time. Obviously, Lizzie and Josie have been around for a while because their parents opened the school, but most people came in at a later point in their life, including most of our main characters who came in within the last 2 to 3 years. So the fact that all of these characters have known this guy for all of their lives obviously doesn't add up, but it's a really interesting dynamic to play with when we're literally going to see part of Hope's life enacted in the play. So I'm really curious to see how that's gonna fit in. Will he be a character in the founding of the school? We'll see. Okay. So MG figured out the really obvious, not everybody could have known him their entire lives. And he reveals himself as the villain. We have one character who knows what's going on, plenty of other characters who don't, which is a really good point to have MG be a lead actor in this arc, see how he's solving the crime, or not the crime, but the mystery. I guess my big problem here is I've, in the last half hour, said at least 3 or 4 people were going to be a main character or a main arc. So there's so many arcs, and I don't know if they can weave them all as well as they have in this introduction. But I love it when we know who our villain is early and we know what they want. And what we've been told is, I'm Puck, I do 2 things. I break people apart. What's the second thing? We don't know. So, number 1, we know that we're going to get some mayhem. We're going to get people who are currently working well together to break apart. We're going to see people that are cracked, fully breaking. But of course, if you know Midsummer Night's Dream, things are taken apart to be put back together again. So I'm sure that we're going to see, essentially, they needed to be broken, to be honest, to be open, and then come back together whole again. I really don't think that Robin Goodfellow is a evil villain. I think his distraction is helping the true villain, the Necromancer. So it's definitely not a good thing, but I think our characters are going to be better off for it. So the characters are helped personally and emotionally, but plot-wise are driven behind, and the villain gains a step forward, which is a really interesting place to go with it. Okay, showing MG being trapped in discovering who the monster is, and then forgetting, and then going to the monster to try and figure out who the monster is. He tells him, he forgets again, he can't communicate it, is really kind of fun. It's showing MG stuck in a rut, which could be really interesting to explore character-wise. I might be giving way too much credit to the writers of this, but so far I'm really excited to see where it keeps going, because it's just a lot of fun. There's so many good elements here. Okay, so something that is really interesting that we're going to see here is seeing whether characters in Legacies fit the characters that they've been asked to play. So we have this discourse about Elena Gilbert, who a lot of people don't like. And so we see Josie, who is going through a lot of problems. She embraced darkness, she hurt a lot of people, all of that. She's been brought in to play Elena, and she says, I don't get Elena. She can't make a decision for anything. When she does, it's a bad one. What's even going on? So I think we're either going to see how does Josie apply to this kind of message, somebody who can't make a decision, somebody who makes the wrong decisions when she does, or are we going to see that another character fits this more? So another thing Josie points out is, how can she sing a song about undying love when so many people that she loves has died? Who else fits the description of still loving despite all reasons not to? Hope. So are we going to see that Hope ends up either playing this role or singing the song at some point later? It'll be interesting to see. So Lizzie has demanded that she be cast in the role of Caroline because she always felt a kinship to her mom. The song that Lizzie is supposed to be singing as Caroline is called I'll Be Okay, and she can't sing it. So is this showing that she is realizing that she's not as much like her mom as she always thought she was, or that she is so much like her mom that it is something too deep and personal for her to manage? It's an interesting plot. We've got really the two plots going side by side, the musical and then dealing with the monster, and then kind of the plot of Hope dealing with loss, which is going to bounce between our two plots, the musical and the monster. All of these are really interwoven with each other, but it's interesting to see how things play out on either end. So the fun and the drama of the monster angle is, how do we defeat the monster, and what is the monster's second half of his plan? I break things apart, and then I do something else. On the musical standpoint, we're going to see how these people really feel connected to the people before them, and how they fit into the roles, or don't, that they've been cast in. So I'm interested to see both sides play out and see where Hope falls in all of it. So I'm really interested in the discourse we have going on with Lizzie. Her plot arc has been so much about feeling okay with herself, about dealing with her bipolar disorder, about trying to feel in control. So she has a lot of bitchy moments, but it's mostly a mask for feeling not good enough inside. And so she looks up to her mother as being perfect. So that's the image she wants the world to see, because she knows that she's not on the inside. Now, Caroline's an interesting character because season 1 Caroline was so annoying. She was so much a disaster, and becoming a vampire really helped her. Other people, not so much. So what we're seeing potentially here, number one, we're seeing Lizzie trying to figure out, what if I don't have the moment that fixes things like Caroline did? But there's also potentially some interesting meta play going on here. So number one, we know that the actor Jenny Boyd absolutely wants Lizzie to become a heretic, which is a vampire siphon combo deal kind of thing. And we actually almost saw that happen to her last season. So had everything kind of played out differently at that point, maybe she would feel more like her mom, more like her life came together by becoming a vampire. So I'm sure that there's some thoughts on what if that would have made things okay for me that are going through her mind at the time. So I'm really interested in seeing how that plays out. Honestly, Hope's our main character. She's going to be a really central player here. But it seems like everybody is getting an arc that really plays to the things they've been dealing with. And the problem is, it's very difficult to tell 20 people's stories well. But if they can, it's going to be a tour de force. So we'll just have to see how well it works. Okay. This is going to take me forever to get through because there's so much to talk about. I love how much they are mocking the Vampire Diaries. There's too much going on, and Bonnie's disappearing, and the Sleeping Beauty spell, and all of this just ridiculousness is being called out because it was ridiculous, and this show went some crazy places and some problematic places, and I like that they're calling it out. It is an homage to the original. It is drawing on some of the really great parts of that, but it's also willing to call out the not so great parts. And it's a really good sign that a writing group, especially a head writer, since the shows have had, consistent producers on many parts of it, to have them be willing to admit to their own mistakes or bad parts is really great. And of course, we're seeing with Landon a struggle over, with so much going on, what's the message? What am I saying? What's this about? And what it's about is going to be fundamentally critical to who he is and what he needs to hear, to do, to know. So I'm interested to see how he ends up taking these original stories and turning them into the message that he and probably Hope need at this moment. Okay, so the big conflict between Hope and Landon, beyond the I don't want you to die, I'm not willing to play my life safe, is really having to do with, can he use her family as part of the story? They are an important part of the story. You don't get this story without them. But they also are seemingly connected to what Landon's trying to say. So the family goes with the phrase always and forever. It's a critical part of the Michelsons' entire history. And it is very tied to Hope's relationship with her dad. Something that's really interesting detail-wise is in this scene, we see Hope trying to paint. Now, painting was something that her dad Klaus did, that she shared with him, that we really haven't seen on this show. We saw that I believe that the last painting that she did with her dad was burned at one point, that she lost that kind of connection to him with the physical object, but seeing her paint means that she's opening up again to her connection to her dad. And I'm really interested in seeing if they go further with that and what this painting ends up being. It's been a skill of Hope's all along. We knew she was an artist, but it was something that we haven't seen on the show in a while because she's so focused on being the hero and not on being a Michelson. So I want to see how this plays out. The monster's going to be playing the role of Klaus. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like playing Klaus is something that really needs to be tied to Hope's narrative, and I don't love that it's gonna be done by our monster of the week. I'm not feeling it. Also, can we talk about how quickly this came together in like the day since they decided they were going to do it? Not only has Landon written the script like 16 times, written, composed, choreographed multiple musical numbers. Like it just, it's a little fast. One might say supernaturally fast. But there's only so much that I'm willing to let magic oversee basic logic, which is to say that this timeline isn't possible. But, it's fine. Okay, first song of the musical, which I'm guessing is called Welcome to Mystic Falls. We see people kind of jokingly talking about, there's more animal attacks than usual, which of course corresponds to vampires. We see all of this upbeat stuff. Everything stays the same. There's a million different balls and parties, which is kind of the fun ridiculousness of the original series. And we see a ballad from the point of view of Elena talking about, being changed by something so fundamentally and everybody else thinking of things as being exactly the same. Obviously, this is connecting back to Elena, whose parents died complicatedly, and how she might have been changed by that, leading to her interactions with Steph and Salvatore, and all of the shenanigans that happened from there. But of course, we also have Josie, who had a really fundamental change. She was essentially split in two, and the dark side of her took over. She caused a lot of pain for other people. And to some degree, the people who love her want to pretend that everything's normal when things aren't. Now, everybody who doesn't love her is perfectly happy to blame her for it. They're willing to admit that there's a change there. But they're not willing to really engage with the change in her, how it impacted her, and her loved ones are so happy to get over it that they're not willing to really deal with what that might have done to her. So I think it's an interesting perspective to have Josie playing that role. Okay, the song Hello Brother was much hyped. It totally deserves it. It's a great song. Sounds beautiful, looks pretty good. Great homage to the original series, to the love triangle between Damon, Elena, and Stefan. The bond between Stefan and Damon, it's really great. It doesn't particularly do anything for the characters of Legacies, but it's a great song. It's a song worth watching and listening to in the future. It's fun. I appreciate it. It's not as connected to everything else as I think that other songs will be. My other thing, Damon and Elena are still alive and theoretically still in Mystic Falls along with their kid. So I feel like they would be here. Like, this seems like a thing that they would want to see, to be upset with, to be proud of, whatever. So if we don't get a cameo from them, which I'm guessing we won't, I'm going to be a little bit upset because at least one of them really ought to show up if we're going to have an entire musical about their lives. But that's just me. What I'm assuming is the I'm Okay or I'll Be Okay Caroline song. I really like the song. I like the concept. I like how it ties into Lizzie and Caroline feeling not good enough, feeling like somebody else is always better than them. I think that was really great character-wise. I don't love the sound of it. Sounded a little bit auto-tuned. It didn't sound good to me. It wasn't bad, it just didn't... Hello Brothers sounds amazing. You got at least one Broadway star in there. I mean, it's going to. I just don't think that Jenny Boyd necessarily had a voice that really pulled me in on this. The lyrics were great. The acting was believable for Lizzie acting this. I felt like the vocals were a bit of a weak point. Okay, so I've said before that my big thing with a musical episode is that they show us one or two numbers and I want to see more numbers. So this one is giving me a lot of different musical numbers and I'm still not satisfied. So maybe that just says something about me. But I guess my problem with it is none of the numbers seem to have that much impact. They're there, they do a thing, they connect to the original Vampire Diaries show. Cool. But none of them last more than about 30 seconds, so they're not terribly memorable. They don't connect very much. So the connection of the actual music itself to the plot, to the characters, to their emotions is a little weak. Yeah. I enjoy it. It just... either give me a full Salvatore the Musical just as a treat, or use musical numbers where they're needed. This seemed like it tried to go middle of the road, and I'm just not feeling it. Okay, so after one of the musical numbers, we see Josie saying, I really understand Elena. She's not being selfish. She's being honest about how she's changed. We see Robin Goodfellow say, I'm really glad you found that, and I'm sorry about this, and then does something that seemed like it broke her arm, but I don't think that's what it actually was. My best guess would be she took away her own magic because she was scared of herself, and I think that he just forced her to take it back. That's my best guess. Obviously, we will find out as I continue watching it, but I like to speculate. And my guess is that because she learned the lesson about you need to acknowledge that you've changed and be open and honest about it, instead of hiding from her changes, he's trying to prompt her to embrace them. That, or he's just trying to hurt her so that he can be a monster and take over everything. I mean, that's totally possible. I don't believe that he's the bad guy here. I'm going to say that multiple times, and then it's just going to come back to bite me, so we'll see. But, anyway.
What are we gonna do?
Ah. Okay, see, I was thinking if we're showing Josie's arc, then her getting her magic back would be the thing that needs to happen. But no, it goes back to one of my earlier theories from before. Hope needs to sing Elena's final song, when you've lost so much and you continue to love. So, Josie now does have a broken arm, which actually is payback from when she broke somebody else's arm in her darkness last season, so I'm totally okay with that. That does actually further her arc potentially. But what this is going to do is force Landon to ask Hope to come join and do the final number, and really work through her issues. Because of course she's the main character. That makes sense. I'm here for it. I just wish they weren't giving us plot threads that they're not going to follow through on. Maybe they'll follow through in later episodes, but at least in this episode, they started with too many plot lines and they're just whittling them down, and it kind of is a disappointment. Okay, so obviously, as I said, this is going to end up being about Hope. So we see her walking in, and I guess the good thing of the monster playing Klaus is that he was able to tell her what she needed to hear from Klaus. And that works, I guess. I don't know. I mean, he has mind manipulation, so I guess that works. It doesn't click with me. I don't find that particularly effective. So her coming around to being open, I don't see it, but this song is going to represent her opening herself to it. And the song is called Always End Tomorrow instead of Always End Forever, which was the motto of the Michaelsons that was broken when, basically everyone died. So I think it's going to be really great. It's going to represent her opening herself up. But I really wish we had actually seen her do that instead of them more or less just being like, the villain said she should be open and now she is. It feels very tell me, not show me. And I think a lot of that is that they tried to do so much, that they kind of half did everything. So they did the front half of Josie's healing. We got to see her work through her stuff. And then they just told us that Hope did her healing and didn't show it to us. And we don't see the process for Hope, and we don't see a resolution for Josie. And I feel like that's a real weakness there. We do get to see a little bit more with Lizzie. We're gonna see her read her message from her mother to try and come to a better place. She's definitely the secondary female role in this setup. But I feel like instead of them picking either Hope or Josie, they just kind of did half arcs for both of them. And unless that really pays off in the next episode, it's not my favorite. It's a bit of a letdown. I have to break things to put them back together. We see a bit of it maybe when Josie's arm is broken. She has a love interest who has medical training, who's gonna put it back together. Cool. It just feels like there's a lot of just accept it going on, and it's not great. My expectations were really high because the first 10 minutes were amazing, and I just don't know that it's able to fulfill the expectations it set up for itself. Okay, so I'll Be Okay was the reprise to the original Something Something Okay song. I was going to say they definitely ought to have a reprise. I was going to say they should have a Hello Brother reprise, a Goodbye Brother, or something like that. I'm okay with it being Caroline since they're trying to push Lizzie as a secondary plot here. I don't know that they actually did a secondary. I feel like they did, like, Hope and Josie and Landon are kind of primary plots, and then, like, tertiary plots are all the other people in the musical, and, like, the 10th plot down is, like, MG just trying to remember who the monster is, and it's not working out terribly, but I am okay with I'll Be Okay being a reprise, because if they didn't do one, it would be a little bit weird, and showing the development of Caroline, which we will hopefully see some development in Lizzie due to playing this role and being able to talk to her mom a little bit. It just, I don't know. I still don't love her voice, and I still feel like all of these plots were kind of half done at best. So that's a shame. Okay, one of the best parts of the entire thing, I'm gonna say, is, you're back, and the sleeping spell made you look completely different, Elena. Because on the one hand, it's a joke about the fact that they switched from Josie to Hope. Cool, whatever. But it's also a mockery of, oh my god, what's her name? I'm gonna be really stupid here. Nina Dobrev. Okay, when Nina Dobrev left the show, she cut her hair and went on to do other things. She aged, I think it was 2 years or something. So they put her in one of the worst wigs of all time. It's one of the most remembered things about the finale of the show. And she looked really stupid, and very different. So I at least am taking that as a complete jab at their failure to make Elena look like she had been under a sleeping spell, perfectly preserved for 2 years. I think actually in the canon of the show it was like 5 years, but real world time like 2 years. She was supposed to be perfectly preserved, but it changed her appearance strongly. I like that was probably a dig at that. Okay. So, Always and Tomorrow. It's the song that Hope needed to sing. I said that from the beginning. It sounded pretty nice. She was singing it to Landon. She was singing it to her dad and to her mom and to everyone that she's lost. It was needed for her emotional development. If only I had gotten to see that emotional development, I mean, that would really have done it. It was nice. I almost started crying. It works. It's the song that it needs to be. It just kind of came out of nowhere, character-wise. I don't know. There's so many good elements, so many good setups, and I feel like they said, we have 20 plots and we want to do them all, and we're going to do them all. And that was a real downfall to this episode, I think. Also, all of the girls are going through really hard stuff, so all of the girls had ballads, and we really don't need that many ballads. You give me one really good ballad, female ballad in a musical, and if you do more than that, it just feels like your musical has no energy. And unfortunately, that's a lot of what I got out of this. There was very, very low energy from all of the female performances, which makes Hello Brother stand out so much more, because it's this, like, suave, energy-filled thing compared to, I'm sad because everything in my life has changed and nobody acknowledges it. I'm sad because I'm not the person that I want to be and I don't think I'm good enough. I'm sad because everyone I know dies. Like, those are all valid. They all would help drive the characters. But because you have 3 female main characters that you are trying to push an emotional narrative on, you've given me a lot of sad, energy-less songs. And I don't think that was a good choice.
You would tell stories.
Oh, but I did call that the second thing he does is put people back together. I mean, I feel like that was really obvious, but that does pull into the monster wasn't actually a bad guy. So this is going to be overall net good for our characters, net bad for the struggle against the necromancer. Except you're not watching. Sorry. So now we're watching the 13 different resolutions that need to happen because they had so many plots that opened. So we see Josie and her potential love interest Jade having a connection and talking about maybe leaving and talking about maybe liking each other and stuff. We see Alaric pop back up again. Remember, I thought would be important at the beginning of the episode. He's willing to take a chance on love too. We're about to see Hope and Landon work things out, and we got this note from Caroline to Lizzie. And so at least there was a bit of a cameo here. COVID, I will accept that COVID meant they couldn't bring the original cast in to be physically there. So they did a voiceover from Caroline, which, is pretty good. That note was intended to be something really significant. And it's really sweet, and it's amazing. But again, it's a plot that really didn't get developed at all. And again, it suffers from the fact that Caroline is around in the world, and there's no good reason that she's not in the show. They kind of gave a reason, but it wasn't a very good one or clear one. So at the end, she says, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just changing. And it's nice to see that. And I'm like, but you haven't been here in 3 years. So you haven't seen anything. And that's just, I don't know. It suffers from the fact that this show is so distinct from the original one. Or the original ones, the originals, and the Vampire Diary, and all of that insanity. The whole show suffers for the fact that the cast of the Vampire Diaries don't show up more often is really weird. And some of the cast of the originals, but at least they killed most of them, so there's a valid reason for them not being there. There was too much to do, and they couldn't do it all, and they tried to do it all, and it didn't work. I forgot about MG. I forgot that was a plot line. And so his whole thing was he loved Alyssa, who was working for the necromancer, and she said she still liked him. And so he was trying to solve the problem with with Puck, and that disappeared for most of the episode, and then it came back, and he was told, don't give up on the worst of monsters who everybody thinks are irredeemable. So he goes to save Alyssa, and she was trying to trap him, and she's gonna hurt him, and I don't care. I mean, you guys have watched my whole roller coaster of this, and I was so excited at all the ways it could go in the beginning. And that was the downfall. There were 20 cool directions to go in, and so they half-assed 20 different directions, and none of it was terribly good, and none of it was a full arc, and I don't know what I'm supposed to feel about most of my characters. It just felt like suddenly everything has changed, and the songs were pretty good, but they didn't know if they were trying to honor the Vampire Diaries or trying to work through our Legacies characters. The ideas of the various plots were great, but none of them were really executed. It impacted the characters, it impacted the plot. We didn't really see it, but they definitely told us that happened. I don't know. It's a letdown for me. I'm disappointed. So anyway, I guess that's it for this episode. I currently don't know what our next episode is going to be. I will update everybody as soon as I know. And anyway, so that's all for me. Make sure to check out the podcast version of Needs More Jazzhands to get a little bit more in-depth discussion of what worked and what didn't in this episode. Where it's really organized instead of me being really excited and then really let down. So you've watched the roller coaster. Listen in on the formal critique, which will be posted next week. So anyway, that's all for now, and I will see you guys all next time.